Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Joe Rickard. Tess, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Super. So I am the Veteran Outreach Coordinator for AgrAbility. And about 18 months ago, Dr. Field had asked us to explore opportunities in beekeeping to assist people with accessibility challenges. So Ned and I kind of took on that challenge. We've done a couple conferences. We've become a lot smarter in beekeeping, especially myself. I am a veteran myself, and I am a beekeeper also. And beekeeping has just been so popular with veterans over the past, maybe decade or so. There's some great programs out there like Dr. Ingreo's Heroes to Hives. There's a Hives for Heroes program out of Texas. There's Mission Believe. I could just keep going on and on about the great programs that help veterans in beekeeping. One of the things I think Dr. Field wanted us to do is really get into that accessibility area and how do those veterans that have come back with injuries or have grown into challenges with arthritis and other things, how do they continue on in beekeeping? So uh, we've kind of taken that out. If you don't know a little bit about history of beekeeping and veterans, it's been about 100 years ago in 1919, after World War One, the VA at the time made a monograph, they called it, for veterans. Um, it's called Beekeeping to the Disabled Soldiers, Sailors, and Marines to aid them in choosing a vocation. It's about 36 pages long. It's very interesting. At that time, beekeeping was more of a challenge um, because of the environment and other things. That the U.S. did not have a large production of honey at all at that time. So, since that time, 100 years later, we're still looking at beekeeping as a great option for veterans. I know there are programs out there that are looking at the tangibility between beekeeping and veterans. And hopefully someday that causative research is really highlighted and we can understand where that touches together. Um, but at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ned Stoller. Ned, it's all yours.
Thank you, Joe. I am an assistive technology professional and an agricultural engineer, and I've been working with AgrAbility for 23 years, helping people in the agriculture industry who have disabilities and are trying to continue doing their work. And this is a USDA program partnership between Cooperative Extension Service and nonprofit disability organizations here in Michigan. It's Michigan State University and Easter Seals, Michigan that work together. And assistive technology is basically how someone with a disability is able to continue doing necessary tasks that they would otherwise be limited from doing. So it could be a different tool, a modified tool, a whole different piece of equipment. It could be a different method in which a person does their work. So when we talk about assistive technology, we are helping someone with a disability do something that otherwise they would be unable to accomplish. And as Joe could tell you better than I, Joe is both the beekeeper and the veteran in the room. I've just been doing this work for a while, but I hear tell of something called beekeepers back, and there's common conditions caused by beekeeping, but at the same time, like Joe said, there's real benefits to a person's health in being active and doing the work, interacting with the bees, even the bee air and breathing and hearing the sounds, lots of evidence for the benefits of that. So if there's a veteran or a person with a disability who wants to be able to have those benefits of beekeeping, that's what we are here to talk about today. And I'm going to go through a collage of slides of different types of adaptive aids and equipment that could help a person with a disability do beekeeping. And Joe, please jump in and give comment, especially if there's any of these items that you have used or use regularly that you would want to share on. So the first aspect of this is if a person needs to move their whole hives around, say at the end of a season, you want to move your apiary into storage for the winter, or at some point, if you want to move it from one orchard to another and you need to pick up and move the whole hives, the two-wheel dolly version from Man Lake and other suppliers can work very well for this. And the fork hand truck shown on the side, basically a forklift on a two-wheel dolly. If your hives are up off the ground with a bottom board a little bit, you can roll underneath and pick up and move the whole hive at once with that instead of doing a lot of physical lifting. This is if you have a partner working with you in the apiary, and this costs less than $100, and it works very well, gripping onto both sides of the hive. You can lift and carry together. For moving individual hive bodies or even whole hives with a crane, on a commercial scale, there's a lot of really nice equipment with large trucks. There's the Easy Lift hive mover. There's cranes on trucks that can lift a pallet that has 2 or 4 hives and swing it right on. There's the slingers. And those are tools commonly used by commercial beekeepers. But on a smaller scale, say less than 200 or 100 hives, probably not going to be economically feasible to have that size of equipment. So the pickup mounted cranes with cables can be used and adapted for lifting hives. But in that case, you're going to need some kind of a grapple or tongs that can grab onto the hive. So this is the Easy Move Hive Lifter. Many of you have probably seen this demonstrated by the beekeeper in Canada on YouTube. And it mounts on a trailer or a truck, and it works very nice, both for lifting and loading, moving hives, and for weighing them. But on a smaller scale, I had a group of students at Michigan State University Mechanical Engineering Senior Design class design some hive lifter tongs shown here that can be used with a pickup truck lift that uses a cable and a scissors mechanism to pinch onto a hive and lift it. Here's pictures of other hive lifter tongs that are either homemade or commercially available. But I've included a link here to instructions that I wrote up on how to build your own hive lifter tongs. If you're not familiar with Instructables.com, it's a website where people put their inventions and things they've created with instructions how to build it. So if you go to Instructables.com, you can search for my name, Stoller Ned. You can search for Assistive Technology. You can put in this direct link here, hive-lifter-tongs, and find pictures with step-by-step instructions how to build your own tongs or lifting hives with a cable crane. And this is one of my clients who actually gave me the original dimensions. He built his own tongs that worked very well. They could lift 2 supers at once. So I basically took his concept and put a chain across the top so that it's a little bit more simple to construct. But you can see here, he mounted his pickup truck crane on what could be inserted into a Reese hitch on the back of a pickup. He puts it onto the 3-point hitch of his tractor. So he has a portable crane that he can move around with his tractor and lift hives with his tongs. This is a commercially available manufactured hive lifter. It's being demonstrated here by Adam and Grail from Heroes to Hives. And it has a cable crank on it. You can raise the gripping pads to whatever level of the hive you want. And then it has an over-center locking lever that pinches on quite tightly. So you could lift the entire hive with this dolly, or you can pick up any portion of it that you would choose. So if you need to do an inspection in the lower brood box, you can lift all of the supers above that, move it out of the way, do your inspections, and then set it back down without lifting with your back at all. The cost of these, there's several manufacturers. It ranges between $800 and $1,500. There is an electric powered version of it also. On YouTube, there's various options of homemade versions of these hive lifters. This is one from Bardwell Farms in New York that I originally saw and decided to try duplicating it. Gary Brown is a veteran beekeeper here in Michigan, and he and I basically took the video from YouTube and built the same thing, made several modifications, but ultimately what we have is a base. We started with a 2-wheel dolly, 600 or 800 pound 2-wheel dolly. We built a mast with some pipes, put a cable winch on, and then made a trolley with gripping arms that can grab on the hive. So there's basically those 3 parts that you're going to need if you build your own hive lifter. And there's some nice videos on YouTube of people who put an electric cable winch on instead of a hand cranked one, and that is definitely a nice benefit also if someone has a shoulder injury. But I did in the chat, if you look in the chat, I attached a file where I wrote up instructions, kind of step-by-step instructions, how we built this, how we started out with the 2-wheel dolly, built the mast, and the trolley. So if you're interested in trying to build something like this, go look in the chat. I think it's the first chat that there is, and you can download that PDF for yourself. If you have more time than money, this is a good idea to build your own. If you have $800 to spend, there's a pretty decent one of these. It's built in Poland. I've had 4 of them shipped to me, I think, for my clients here in Michigan. They're on eBay. I think it's called the Api but otherwise they're available in the US also, if you've got money to spend. As far as gripping aids to improve the ability of your hand use, the glove, the Easy Grip glove, Grip Ease glove, you're holding the hive tool for a long time and you need to be squeezing it. Or even if you're holding a heated knife and you're uncapping, anytime you're holding a tool for a long time, this Velcro grip glove, basically you put your hand in a fist around the tool, strap the Velcro around it, and it holds your hand tight. So if you have a gripping impairment, you can't squeeze and hold. Sometimes people have had a stroke or a brain injury. They have to concentrate to keep their hand flexed in a fist. This glove would keep you from just randomly dropping things. But if you want to let go of the tool, you have to reach over with your other hand and unstrap the Velcro. So, like I said, it's useful if you're holding a tool for a long time. But there's different ergonomic tools that you can use for breaking the propolis seal. The giant hive tool will give you more leverage if you have weaker arm strength as far as being able to pry apart things. The 14-inch longer handle can be helpful. And then the frame grip, if you're struggling to pinch with the tips of your fingers to get a hold of the frames and lift them out during your inspections or when you're harvesting the honey, The frame grip allows you to use your whole hand, the strong muscles of your thumb and fingers to grab a frame instead of the tips of your fingers. Here on the left is a piece of assistive technology, and we call that a stick. And basically, once you've gone to the work to break the propolis seal, sometimes you do it and you set the hive down and it sticks right back down and you're doing the same work twice. And I say I like to work so much I have to do things twice, but if you can avoid that, you might as well. And just propping a little stick or something in to keep the hive apart can be helpful. And then on the right, we have a piece of pipe foam insulation wrapped around a chisel. So when you're using small hand tools, whether it's a screwdriver with a small handle, a chisel, a punch, whatever it might be, your hive tool, if you have arthritis in your hands, having a softer, larger diameter handle on a tool can make it much easier to grip. And that's probably 50 cents. You use that pipe foam insulation to make a better handle on your tools. Otherwise, there's a lot of tools you can buy that are ergonomic grip that can also be helpful. I have some pictures here from the Hive Life conference. I was there with Joe in Sevierville, Tennessee last January and plan to be back there again this year. These are handles that can be added onto your hives to make it easier to grip them. And then these white plastic pieces that are screwed on the side just make it easier to get a pry bar in to break the propolis seal without chewing into the wood on your hive bodies. When I am a carpenter, I love to have my tool belt on. And I would call a tool belt a mobility device for somebody with a disability. And that's because if you forget a tool and you have to go walk back to the truck to get it, how many steps and how much energy did that take you? If you had a nice tool belt like this and your hive tools attached and everything you need is attached and right there with you, you don't have to go hiking looking for things. You've got it on your person. And so this is a simple accommodation that I would highly recommend. Of course, my son, he won't wear a tool belt for the life of him. He runs all over going back and finding and grabbing tools. But that's when you're 16 and have tons of energy and your legs work good. I thought this was a pretty ingenious invention, and probably you beekeepers that go to Hive Life all the time are familiar with it already, but it was new to me. And basically this person is using a torque wrench, electric readout torque wrench that he's designed with a little bracket you can slide under your hive, and you twist the torque wrench on this bracket and it tells you how heavy your hive is. You take the reading on the torque wrench screen times 4 and it tells you the weight of your hive. So without lifting, moving, using a crane or any kind of contraption to weigh your hives, you can do a quick assessment and see how the bees are producing by using a torque wrench. This is my kind of invention. It's one of the things about assistive technology is if you start from ground up designing something, that's the most expensive way to accommodate for a disability. The ideal situation is that you can just change how you do the task. But if you need a tool and you can find one that's already been invented and on the market, that's really great. The next best thing is if you can figure out how to use something that's already been invented and tweak it a little bit or adapt it and turn it into something. So that's what they've done here. They've turned a torque wrench into what I consider assistive technology. They probably didn't invent this for somebody with a disability. They invented it to make it more convenient for everybody. But the net result is this is assistive technology for someone who can't handle the equipment to weigh their hives. These are some really cool cast iron or wrought iron hive tools but I took a picture of them because the longer, larger ones, once again, could give you more leverage if a person needed it. Of course, they're probably quite heavy. Depends on your ability. That's the other thing about assistive technology. Everybody's situation and abilities are slightly different, and the needs that they have in the apiary. So what is going to work for you might not work for the next person, but showing you some options here. When we talk about bee yard mobility, the very first thing that I think about is trip hazards. And the apiary are quite often out at the edge of an orchard, by the edge of a field, way back by somebody's woods. And it's pretty common that there's tall weeds or grass. Maybe even you've planted some crops, flowering crops for the bees to forage in, and that's growing up all around your hives and can make it quite difficult for someone to walk. And then you think about the fact that you're lifting and carrying and twisting and moving. And if you're in the north or in a place where there's bears, you have electric fencing around. So you have to walk from one end of the apiary to the other to get out. The weed fabric that's shown here on the left is really nice to just keep the weeds down so that someone can walk safely when they're working in their apiary. The gravel pad shown on the right, that's really sweet. It's going to cost more than the weed fabric, but it accomplishes the same purpose. And I would say if you have a community apiary or you're doing a training site for veterans, or if it's a beekeeping club and you're teaching young beekeepers, setting it up to be accessible for all the people, even how the hives are spaced, allowing someone to come from different angles, different sides, and get to the hive. Just how you set it up can make it very accessible or impossible for people to access if you don't do it right.
Hey, Ned, I would just jump in. One of the things that I have found that works really well is pool covers, and they're free. If you know a guy who replaces above ground pool covers, those things are about 30 by 50. They're nice and heavy. And if you anchor them down like the other one, and they're free because they just throw them away anyways after they replace them.
So what would you do, Joe? Just mow the grass down real tight and then lay out the pool cover and stake it down?
Yep. Just like you do the other items, except it's free and it's a little thicker, so you don't have as much risk of tearing and other things. But they're kind of too heavy to do with other gardening stuff because they're hard to move around for other, like solarizing your garden or something. But if you put them permanently there, they're pretty good.
Thank you. I guess what I'm showing here is the difference between a nice concrete pad, but most of us don't have apiaries in a parking lot. But compared to, this is what I was talking about, the trip hazards and the tall grass growing around the hives. I would point out the stool positioned here beside these hives. And this beekeeper, whenever he stands up, he doesn't stand up to walk until he sees his next destination where he can sit. And so he has stools positioned all around, and they're low cost. He can still use his energy to walk and get from place to place, but he just can't stand once he gets there. And so he has accommodated himself in that way. A utility vehicle is really nice for getting out to the back 40, wherever the hives are at. You can carry, if you're feeding the bees, you can carry your liquid syrup with you. It's a great piece of assistive technology. You can set it up to plow snow, to spray weeds. Some of them can tow mowers. So if you're establishing an apiary somewhere that's distant, you want to put the apiary in the correct location. You can't put it up by the barn if that's not a good location for your bees. So an ATV with a few proper tools could enable a person with a mobility impairment to place their bees in a distant spot and still do a good job taking care of them. So I recommend side-by-side utility vehicles and ATVs all the time for assistive technology. They're very, very helpful. And you can save your energy from walking all that distance so that once you get to the site, you've got strength to do the tasks that you need to do. You didn't burn all your energy by walking. This greenhouse cart on the left is, I call it an outdoor walker. I was in the grocery store and I saw an older person pushing their grocery cart down the aisle, and they were draped over the handlebar, and they were using it to take the weight off of their back and hips. And I thought, oh, if only we had something like that for outdoor use. And then I saw these greenhouse carts, and I thought, oh, it's perfect. You can load it up, because lifting and carrying is difficult for somebody with a mobility impairment. Even someone who needs to walk with a cane or a walker, they only have one hand available to carry things then. But with these greenhouse carts, and I was just at the Great Lakes Fruit and Vegetable Growers Expo, there's really nice carts available for $500 and less. You could load these up, just like I talked about wearing the belt, the tool belt with your hive tool and everything. You could load up one of these carts and set it up like your beekeeping station and put your smoker. You could put syrup on it. You can put all sorts of extra pieces and parts that you need to take with you, and then lean on it and push it and walk with it. It's a great way to get exercise and keep moving, but you can take some of the load off of your back and legs as you do so. The middle picture is just showing a utility vehicle outfitted with a crane. And then on the right is an electric powered cart. These are right around $2,500. And once again, they can carry really heavy loads, like up to 1,000 pounds. The DR Power Wagon one, you can get really heavy duty powered carts that can also serve as a walker that you can lean on, but you don't have to push it to move it around. And this might be an in-between accommodation instead of a utility vehicle or ATV if your hives are close enough that you could walk to them with this aid. So there's all sorts from, first of all, just taking away the trip hazards, all the way up to an ATV or a powered cart to handle beehive access. This is a snow blower, and up in Adam Ingrao's neck of the woods, a snow blower is important for being able to get out to your hives. But this particular snow blower is broken down, and the engine still works really good, and it has a 5-speed transmission. And so we decided to modify this snow blower to be a cart pusher. And so my son and I took the snow blowing mechanism off, built a hitch on the front of it, and attached a heavy duty yard wagon to the front. And we turned it into a gas powered cart. And we loaded it up with 300 pounds of chicken feed, because we have chickens but not bees, and tested it. And it was really amazing what this thing could push in the snow and in the dirt and in the mud. And it's got different gears, so you can go slower or faster. It's even got reverse. And it was a snowblower that somebody gave to us because it was broke. We didn't build it heavy enough, and our weld ended up breaking on the hitch part, so we have to beef it up. But as far as a proof of concept, it really worked slick. So if you're handy in the shop, or you know a fabricator, and you live in the north where you might be able to get a snowblower and adapt it, it worked for us. This is a horizontal hive. Comes out of North Carolina, and Ricky and I worked together and came up with a concept. He built it. It's got seat swivels, fishing boat seat swivels at each end between the legs and the hive body. And it rotates 45 degrees. So a person sitting in a wheelchair can have easy access to their hive and work with their horizontal bees. The challenge of this is that it needs to be monitored much more closely. You can't just simply add another set of frames to the top of it. But it's so convenient that a beekeeper in a wheelchair could take better care of their bees, possibly in this arrangement, than with the stackable hives. This is a trailer.
Hey, Ned, if I could just jump in on the last one real quick.
Go ahead.
Hey, I was just going to say, sometimes those horizontal hives are also climate contingent. It's harder to control or to manage a horizontal hive in the cold weather. It's easier to do in the warm weather. The bees have a difficult tendency to build horizontally than they do vertically. So make sure that if you use a horizontal hive, that it's proper and usable in your climate too. So thanks, Ted.
Yep. Rich Whiskey is the president of the Michigan Beekeepers Association, and in his apiary, his instructional apiary here in Michigan, he has one of these that he's testing. So it'll be interesting to see how it works for him. He's quite a skilled beekeeper, so if anybody can do it, he can. Joe, you want to talk about these hives?
Sure. So those look like they are Aja hives that are mounted in a trailer. Aja is the European version of a hive, and it's very interesting for somebody that might be physically challenged in lifting, and that you can open the back area of it where you see the mesh frame, and then you can pull the hives out almost like a file cabinet. You pull them forward and you work each frame. It's an interesting technique. I think Mission Believe, well, I know Mission Believe kind of teaches it out at in Maryland, but it's a good technique if you have the opportunity or the need to do that. And I would also add that I've recommended that setup to some people that are visually impaired as well, because normally it goes inside of a structure. So if somebody needed more tools around them, more lighting, or kind of just a more of a sit down environment, it provides kind of a better climate for something like that if they want to continue in beekeeping.
Do you want to talk about bee air?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of people with Aja hives have the belief that the bees, as they produce propolis and other things, create a smell. I'll tell you, I don't know if it helps me. I will tell you that when I get stung in an arthritic joint, and I have plenty of them, it does feel better afterwards. There's also known medical therapies that will do the same thing. There's a sucralose therapy I've had in my arthritis where it inflames the area, and then when the ligament or the joint fights to recover, it ends up in a more comfortable or in a better, healthier position. Then it temporarily works. So people do both bee sting therapy and then some beliefs on the smell, and that the bee air kind of helps to calm people and the like. I don't know if I believe that. I do know that when I open my apiary up and I smell banana, because that means the bees are mad, I often get a little bit of anxiety and back away. So,
thank you. I call this a beehive deck, and I learn from my clients all the time. And this is one that when they need to work on the higher levels of the hive, they can step up on the deck and they don't have to reach so high to lift the boxes. But when they need to do inspections, they can stand down at the ground level and they don't have to bend over so far to look in the brood. So this is an old boat dock. I've seen people use tables, hive stands with steps up to them, hay racks, various different ways to accomplish this, even landscaping. If you have landscaping, timbers around one side. But the concept is you don't have to lift as high and you don't have to bend down as far. And then on this deck is a hydraulic lift cart. You can get them for, I think, less than $300 at various locations. And you can pump up the cart. So if you're unstacking a hive, you can take the top super and put it on, and then the next super, and then you can lower the cart so that as you're taking supers off, you don't have to lift them to stack them onto this cart. You can just keep lowering the cart. So you're basically just moving the supers horizontally. And then when it's time to put them back onto the hive, you can do the same thing. Take the first one off the stack and put it on the hive and then pump the cart up. So the cart does the lifting for you and you basically have to move the hive bodies sideways.
Ned, there's a question. It says, why is the area partially fenced screened? Is that important for something?
It's probably important for something, but I don't know what.
Ned, it's probably a wind block. They're probably trying to block the wind in the winter. I'm not sure if if that was taken in Michigan, but most of the time, a lot of beekeepers will put a fence around it to block wind.
Yeah, and there was another question that may have been from the slide before. It says, where is it available from North Carolina?
Oh, the horizontal hive?
I'm not
it's
sure.
horizontalbees.com.
Okay.
That's the North Carolina.
I'll put the link in that.
Thank you. And I don't know about the Aja hives if they were asking about those. I don't know where you would get those. Any ideas, Joe?
Yeah, I got to look up their name. I'll post that as well.
This trailer was at the Hive Life conference. So they were probably a vendor there, but I didn't get their name. These are different styles of hive stands. You can build your own or you can buy them. This one here at the end is a easy bee stand, and it will rotate 45 degrees so you can have your hive tilt towards you once again for the benefit of someone in a seated position to look into their hive and do an inspection. And Randy Guiley out west has instructions that he's put together for building your own tilting hive if you're working in a wheelchair. This is a swarm trap. And I had a group of beekeepers from Heroes to Hives in Missouri asking if I had any ideas how to lift a swarm trap up in the woods 8 feet up and trying to climb a ladder, and especially once it's full with a swarm, how to get it back down. And so I built a sliding track out of 2x4s and put a pulley at the top. You can take this and strap it to a tree, sort of like a deer hunting tree stand, strap it to the tree, set your swarm trap on it, and then pull the rope. So pull it up and tie it off to another tree. And I am having a group of students do drawings and instructions for this next spring. So hopefully I'll have a nice set of plans. If you're a woodworker, I can send you more pictures and you can probably build your own. But this was a concept that looked pretty promising for that. So if you want to try to catch swarms from your neighbor's apiary, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there in beekeeping. So you can put some lemongrass scent in there and catch your neighbor's bees. You don't really do that, do you, Joe?
Which one? Steal people's
Try to
bees?
try to catch swarms from your neighbor's bees when they don't take good enough care of them.
I worry more about the cornfields and soy fields in the spring than catching bees.
Okay. Working in a workshop. You don't have to work down on the ground. Set up with some nice tables. This man on the right is the one who does everything from a seated position, but he's got nice work areas that he can do everything at a workbench instead of down low. Be organized instead of cluttered. I would call an organized workshop like pegboards with hooks and tracing the outline of your tools. I would call that an assistive technology method, because if you can see and find your tools quick and easy, whether you have a vision impairment, a mobility impairment, whether maybe you have a disease where you have reduced stamina and energy, you don't need to be taking extra steps hunting all over the place to find a tool that is right in front of you, but it's tucked underneath 7 other tools and you can't find it. So I know a lot of us, I wouldn't want you to see my shop right now, but an organized shop is really good assistive technology, and it's worth a little bit of investment and time planning it to know where your things are at. This is a fixture for putting together, building your own hive bodies, and it clamps the 4 boards together. And when you step on the pedal, it rotates 90 degrees. So you can nail one side, step on the pedal, and it spins, nail the next side, spins, nail the next side. So this is an ergonomic efficiency. Instead of you moving around the nail from different angles, it moves for you. Some other workshop ideas is heat. If you have arthritis or a lot of disabilities are made worse in cool, damp weather, having a heater to take some of the moisture out of the air and keep you warm. Adjustable height stools and workbenches like this little cart are very nice to get you positioned correctly so you're not reaching in awkward positions with your shoulders and arms. You're not bending over, reaching down low, but you can adjust the height of your seat and adjust the height of your table. And then having cushioned floor mats that you can stand on if you have hip and knee and ankle, foot and back conditions. Just standing on a cushion can relieve a lot of that pain and help you feel better at the end of a day. A lot of these things maybe are not so important the day you're doing the work, but the next day after, that you won't be so sore. This is a box frame from a bed that was turned into a bucket holder for washing out syrup buckets. This beekeeper can load it up with a whole bunch of buckets and pressure wash them all at once. And here's the same beekeeper here in Michigan using a fixture that he made that he can put 10 frames in at once and nail them all quickly with his air nailer. It's to improve the efficiency when he's building his frames, preparing for the next season. A tool balancer is a spring-loaded cable that holds up the weight of a tool if you're working in a stationary location. Say you're nailing together frames, it could hold the weight of your air nailer above your bench. So all you have to do is basically guide it into position. This is a drill with a paint stirrer on it for mixing syrup for feeding the bees instead of stirring by hand if you have a shoulder impairment or grip strength injury. Oh, I should also point out his trash can is set on a rolling dolly, and Dave uses dollies for everything around his shop. Instead of lifting and carrying things, he sets everything on a rolling dolly and he just rolls it around instead of lifting and carrying. Good idea in many ways if you have a nice concrete floor that you're working on. In the honey house, got powered extractors. We just helped one of our clients here in Michigan convert her Max extractor from a hand crank to a powered. I think it was $400 maybe for the upgrade to the motor for someone with arthritis or a shoulder injury. The heated knife is a very nice accommodation for uncapping. And once again, setting up in a way that you can work from a seated position when you are bottling your honey. And I would also say the heater, to have a nice warm space to work in. It'll help your honey flow better and be more convenient for yourself. This is a double roller uncapper. If holding on to the knife for hours on end is not something that you can do, you basically take your frames with two hands and shove them down between the two rollers, and it cuts in through the comb, and then you can put it into your extractor. It's just a different way of doing it. Uses different body motions. This is a horizontal extractor, and it's much lower to the ground so that a person doesn't need to reach up and over. It would be quite simple to load this extractor from a seated position. And the only challenge that the salesman told me about is right at first, when the honey is coming out very quickly from the comb, it doesn't flow quite as fast out of the bottom of the extractor. So you have to start spinning it slowly and then speed it up. But I thought that this looked like a very accessible extractor to use. Joe, have you ever seen or used one of these? Spins in a horizontal direction?
I have not, no.
This is an adjustable height bottling frame. You can tilt your bucket with it. If you're filling larger or smaller bottles, you can adjust the holder shelf up and down so that you don't have to hold the bottle while it's filling. And this is a beekeeper here in Michigan. He has a laser cutter in his shop, and he builds these foam honey boxes that fit right in with the frames in a hive. You can assemble them and set them in the hive. The bees build the comb inside the boxes, fill it with honey. You can open the hive and take the boxes out, and you have comb honey ready to sell. You don't have to cut it or do anything with it. It's already in a saleable package. So the goal is for these ideas, and there's probably 1,000 more that I haven't thought of and several hundred that I haven't put in here, but there's a lot of ways for somebody with medical impairments to be able to keep bees, and here at AgrAbility would like to be helpful in that way. I plan to be at the Hive Life Conference in January. Joe is going to the American Beekeepers Conference in Louisville. I'll be in Sevierville, Tennessee, and we plan to be at the Eastern Apiary Society meeting in August. So we're working in this arena quite a bit at this time. And so if any of you as experienced beekeepers have ideas or methods, modified tools, Justin Ruger is working with us quite a bit in trying to think about different tools to develop and methods. We really want to learn more in this area and keep improving the concepts and publicizing them for the beekeeping community. So please reach out to us. You can visit agrability.org and look at the toolbox. There's some beekeeping accessibility ideas there, and also be in touch with Joe and I. We'd be happy to correspond with you individually as needed. You can find the AgrAbility states in your area also at the AgrAbility website. So, are there any other questions or discussion that you would like to have? Comments?
Ned, there is another question in the chat. It says, what is the source for the adjustable height bottling setup?
I will have to look for that.
Hey, Ned,
Have to see if I can.
is it in the toolbox?
I don't know if this is in the toolbox or not.
Okay.
Are you, Joe, are you able to share your screen? Would you want to go navigate through the toolbox and demonstrate how to look for that?
Sure, if you want me to.
I think that would be a good exercise. I'll stop sharing my screen if you want to share yours and take us on a walk through the toolbox.
Ned, and they asked you to put your email in the chat for them.
I will put my email in the chat.
So this is the toolbox. I think you can see that. Can you see the toolbox, Ned?
I can.
One thing I would add is we're navigating the toolboxes. I was just going to mention a lot of times things with beekeeping, you can adjust techniques. For instance, you can do an 8-frame instead of a 10-frame box. Some people do single brood chambers. You know, there's a lot of things you can change in your technique. Some people like the flow hive, and people ask me about the flow hive all the time. And I would say the important thing is it's to understand the bees and how they react and what bees are going to do in different environments. You know, the Langstroth chambers are kind of the most common in the US, but there's other ways of doing it that sometimes, like the Aja hive, will adjust the heights. But if you're going to do something different, you definitely need to understand what's going to happen with the bees. So I clicked on the toolbox in the search, and I'll do a search. And when doing the search in the toolbox, hopefully you can see that you'll see the uncapping knife, the bucket bench pail holder, the high frame uncapper. I believe that's a little different one. A seated position honey extractor, rotatable beehive system. And you can go through all of these. There's the Aja hive, the beehive carrier Ned has mentioned. I'll tap on the horizontal hive real quick. So you tap on the letters, and you'll see the hive, short description on it, kind of a costing idea, and then the people that have contacted us that we know sells items like that. And you know, then it's up to the individual, you know, decide what's right for them in style or which company to go with if they decide to do that. Did I do okay, Ned?
You did. I just zoomed in on the name tag of the guy that was selling that adjustable height bottler, and he's from a place called Hidden Happiness Bee Farm. So if you go to hiddenhappinessbeefarm.com, he's got all kinds of beekeeping products and ideas there. But it's probably available other places also. But I wish I had a better link for that. I don't at this moment. We'll work on that. Are there any other questions or comments?
I don't see any other questions. Lots of thanks and great, really good stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great. So nice job, Ned and Joe. Thank you. And just a reminder to fill out the evaluation. There's the link in the chat if you can do that. And we hope to see you at further sessions. And Ned and Joe will be doing a beekeeping session at the NTW, our national training workshop, which is going to be held in Atlanta, Georgia. in March. So if you're interested in seeing them present in person, there's information about the National Training Workshop on the agrability.org website. So,
All right.
thanks, Ned. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.